And we're going to go live in just a minute. Well, actually, in a minute, 45 seconds, we'll go live. In the meantime, if you are here and you're here early, what do you think of the new beard? As I think I said to you last week, there are some new babies in the larger family. And of course, I don't think any parent is going to be taking, the mall Santas are not open this year, I suspect. I haven't been to a mall in such a long time with COVID and everything. But the mall Santas, I suspect, are not open. You can't take your baby to the mall. And so there's a couple of new babies in my greater family that I thought might want to get a picture with Santa Claus. So I grew a beard to fill the spot. Let me know in the comments below if you are getting your picture taken with Santa Claus this year. Kind of interesting, I suspect. Let me find, there it is, there's comments. Bring up the comments if anybody's going to leave me a comment. I'd appreciate a comment. Oh, so much. Come in and say hi. Tell me what it is that you do in the trucking industry. And we will go officially, we'll start this segment of the Secrets of Safety Dog in 19 minutes. Andrew Stacy, thank you. Mr. Stacy from Calgary, I want to say. Where are you from, Andrew? I think he's out west. Wondering what the snow would be like out there. So let me change this graphic now that we have gone to the Secrets of Safety Dog. And let me go over to here. Oops. Uh-oh, now I just screwed something up, I know. You gotta love doing things live. So we are going to share my window now. And again, you gotta love doing things live. That didn't work out so well. There we go. So we are live. And did I start at the end? I did. I started at the very end of today's thingamabobber here. So let's get to the beginning. All right, we are live. The Secrets of Safety Dog. We go live Mondays at 1 o'clock. And Andrew says, yes, out in Calgary. It's been warm for the last plus 11. Yes, you got to love those Chinooks. Andrew, just to give you a little weather thing here, we are about 0. We got a little dusting of snow on the ground maybe, and not much more happening in that. And again, yes, there we go. All right, so today's not November the 30th. Forgot to change that. We are December the 7th. All right, what are we talking about today? Let me put my ugly face back on here if I can figure out how to do that. And no, that's not how you do it, Chris. We wanted to add a camera. There we go. All right, so with that, we are going to quickly do one thing in the news because I really think this is important. And what do we got? Andrew, it's been warm. Let me just change this to Google Chrome. And this lawyer, these groups of lawyers, of course, down in the States, they're talking about the importance of increasing trucking insurance minimums. In the States, as you might know, the minimum insurance currently is $750,000. And there are many groups who want it to go up to 2 million, some even to 5 million. Now, if you're a Canadian trucking company, most of you have more than $750,000 as your insurance premium. However, some of you may not, but it's a good chance that it is going to go up. And I don't know what the heck I hit there, but obviously the wrong thing. So it's likely to go up. What are we talking about today? And why is that not coming up the way it is supposed to come up? And of course, gotta love doing lives when you do it once a week. and it, there we go. That's the file I want to show you. Okay, so this week, once again, continuing on in the secrets, how to prepare for an MTO audit. And Andrew's from Calgary, so this is very similar to how to, sorry, I'm distracted over here because my Facebook Live is also on. And I didn't mean to do that. Let me just shut that down because I find that very distracting to see myself over there. All right, so how to prepare for any ministry audit would be one way to look at this. And again, there's in Ontario at least, and Andrew, you can pipe in if you're still there. Is it the same out west? I don't believe it is quite the same for Calgary or for Alberta at least. But in Ontario, there's the three main components: your maintenance, your QR&R, which is qualifications, records, and reporting, and your hours of service documents. So today, we've already talked about those three categories in a broad sense. We're diving a little bit deeper into QR&R. Specifically, we're talking about driver files and what needs to be in a driver file. So I'm going to be referencing frequently this publication by the MTO, and it's called the Commercial Vehicle Safety Manual. The link for this book is in the show notes below, just so you know. And specifically, we're talking about Module 7. Module 7 is a huge module, but we're going to be honing in specifically just on what's required for the driver files. And this is cut and pasted right out of that manual. What is required and recommended items is how they talk about it. Believe it or not, they want you to have the truck driver CVOR, and it needs to be within the last 12 months of the audit. You've got to be able to display to the auditor or show the auditor that you know about all of the driver's convictions in the last 24 months. And I mean all of the convictions, both personal and those that happened in a commercial truck. Collisions, you've got to know about all the commercial motor vehicle collisions that happened, and you're going to see that kind of changes in a sec. But you need to know about all of the collisions, and then what did you do about the collisions? How did you discipline the driver? How did you train the driver? Did you dismiss the driver? So you got to have a record of the actions that you took as a result of those collisions. And of course, transportation of dangerous goods, training if necessary for your company, you need to have that in the file. And by the way, if you use agency drivers or driver companies that supply you with drivers, the same requirements extend to them. So you need to have, I think, a copy of their driver file. If you're getting a driver agent from an agency, you got to make sure that you have access to that driver file, and that driver file meets the requirements. And if it doesn't, you're the one that's going to get the ticket. So that's really important. And Andrew says, thanks, Andrew. There's similarities. Let me see if I can use this software here for what it's supposed to be used for. And of course not. There. Did that work? Hey, it worked. All right, so Andrew says there are similarities across the provinces. However, there are subtle differences, even when dealing with federally regulated carriers. I do reviews across Canada and territories. It's best the company really look up the regulations in their province. Thanks for that, Andrew. And of course, we got to click over there, and there we go. In addition, so those are the main items. In addition, in the book, you'll find that they also want to see a completed application form, one that includes at least 3 years of history. Hey, Mr. Outridge. Bruce and I, Bruce joins us right now, and Bruce and I had a long conversation about the future. Not sure I can say anything yet, but the future, Bruce and I are talking about a little me participating in one of Bruce's endeavors. So thanks for that, Bruce. And of course, we're talking about trucker radio. Did I say it right? Let me see if I can go back over here, and trucktalk.ca the lead pedal radio. And Bruce has a show on there called Truck Talk. So if you want to listen to some trucking music, go to leadpedalradio.com and you're going to find a lot more about Bruce. But hi, Bruce. So getting back to the secret, 3 years of employment history, as well as you need to know about all of the collisions. So earlier I said you needed to know about the collisions in commercial trucks, but now this is recommended that you know about all the collisions in both the commercial truck and your personal autos. Medical certificate. Now in the book it does say that you can use other stuff to make sure that they do have a medical certificate, and other stuff could be an up-to-date CVOR or driver's abstract, because that too shows that the driver has a medical. And then they have another category called best practices. And a best practice is an annual review. And Bruce says I can go ahead if I wish. So Chris Harris, Safety Dog, is going to have a show on the leadpedalradio.com. So Chris Harris is going to have a radio show. Does that make me a disc jockey, Bruce? I don't know what the heck. Anyways, we're still discussing all the pros and not the pros and the cons, but all the intricacies of it. Oh, how do I supply a radio show? All right. Anyways, back to driver files is what we're talking about, and annual reviews is under the recommended column. Recognition for good performance of the driver, as well as opportunities for improvement of the driver, are under the recommendations that MTO has. So you got to review the driver abstracts more than what is, so they're also looking for during an audit more than what is required. They want to know, so driver abstracts are more than what is required, but are you getting them just annually, which is what is required, or are you getting them monthly or quarterly? So what does Bruce say here? Not really, more of a radio host. Okay, so I'm going to become a radio host is what it is. That's cool. We're still working on all of that, but that is cool. Thanks, Bruce. And of course, now that I clicked off of the page, it doesn't work. A level 2 CVOR is under the recommendations or the best practices, and at least every 1 to 6 months, depending on your fleet size, you really need to step up your game. Once a year is just not enough. And then recommend, again, they have, so this is a long list, and we're going to go over it really quick at the end here, but recommended additional items, they want a road test and examinations. In other words, testing used to train and evaluate your drivers. So what written tests do you have? So believe it or not, this is in writing in the truck drive or in the CVOR safety manual that they want this stuff. Drug and alcohol testing records if required. Now, of course, if you're Canadian only, you do not yet have to do drug and alcohol testing, but if you cross border into the States, of course you do. I'm sure you know all about that. So real quick recap here. What's required in a driver file? You got to have an application form, and the application form needs to include 3 years of history. You got to have a know about all the collisions and those things. So the driver has to disclose the collisions. And the red asterisk beside that means that it is scored in a driver file or in a driver file audit. This is actually scored in the MTO audit. And you need violations, a list of all the violations, and that also is scored in the MTO audit process. Driver abstracts are scored in the MTO audit. So there, driver abstracts are scored. You'd like to have a CVOR abstract. That is not scored, but it's a great idea. Annual reviews are not scored, but need to be there. Corrective discipline action. So what action did you take after a collision or a conviction? What action did the carrier take with the driver? And of course, you need to document it because you want to be able to show during an audit during an MTO audit exactly what action you did take. All right, so TDG training is scored if it is required for your company. And then a record of all training that you've given. Do you see what's happening here? They want records of all training. Are you training your drivers, or are you just throwing them the keys when they come on board? You need to be training the drivers, and this is in the CVOR safety manual, that you've got to be training your drivers, as well as Labor Ontario and Labor Canada are also say that you've got to train your employees. And in this case, this would actually include those that are Driver Inc. Even though they aren't employees, you still need to be training those operators. So medical requirements and the expiry of those medical requirements. And again, you can use a abstract to meet that regulation. What's on next week? Well, next week we are going to be talking about written policies and procedures. You can see this is part of the content of Module 7. And so next week we're going to be talking about written policies and procedures, and exactly which policies and procedures do MTO want you to have in writing. Who's on the Dawg on It Trucking podcast this week? Oh gosh, Jim Park. Sorry, I forgot. Jim Park was on the show this last Friday. Great interview with Jim Park. Jim is a writer for a number of media outlets and a former truck driver, a radio DJ. Yes, Bruce, he was a radio DJ. That's where I first heard him. He was on CHML here in Hamilton, doing an over-the-night show aimed at trucking. So anyways, he's been in the trucking industry for a long time. He's on the show. So next week, we are talking about written policies and procedures. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Bruce and Andrew, thank you. Andrew, interested in the comments, what's different here in Ontario? And I know Andrew, if you don't know Andrew, he works for one of those insurance companies, and he's one of those safety guys that comes out and visits trucking companies, and his report and review has a great impact on what your insurance company thinks of you, and therefore what your premiums are going to be. So whenever a safety fellow from your insurance provider comes out and visits with you, please, it has a huge impact on your insurance premium. So you really want to be prepared and doing stuff the right way for them. And Andrew works for Aviva. Yay, Aviva. And Aviva was one of the sponsors of our truck driver training that was held in the past, what was that, 2 weeks ago now. With KRTS and Safety Dog, we did a joint live training. And we thank Aviva for that sponsorship. And that's it for this week. We've passed by 15 minutes by a minute. Thanks so much. The Safety Dog is out.